يا شيخ؟
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى وسلم على محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد, I thought we would have more people for talking about jinn, because people usually talk about jinn more than anything else. They find it more, it's kind of funny, the dark side is always more interesting. So today, inshallah, we usually begin with one of the names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But I don't know if you guys want to skip that and go to the jinn right away.
Is the attribute?
Huh?
Attribute?
Yeah, well, you want to do the attribute first?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's the blessings of Allah.
Of course it is. Okay, so the name I picked today, which we didn't cover before, which is Al-Hakam, Al-Hakim, and Al-Hakim. Right? So Al-Hakam, what does Al-Hakam mean? Ruler, judge. Is that right? Al-Hakim? Ruler, judge. Is that right? So is there a difference?
What's the first one?
Hakam, Hakim.
Hakam is the rule.
No, Al-Hukm is the rule. Al-Hakam is the one who
Implementer.
produces the rule.
Introduces.
Right? Produces the rule. Or, mentions the rule. And Al-Hakim,
Someone who implements.
it's very difficult to kind of find translation in English, but there is a bit of a variability or a difference in it. So they always argue, is Hakam better than Hakim, which is better in all these things. But Al-Hakam and Al-Hakim, right, they say it comes with the meaning of Al-Hakim, which means he's the judge. Hakim, which is, remember, Sighat Fa'il, which is exaggeration. Ba'na Fa'il, which means the one who is actually executing, the one doing it. Who's ruling, it says, who perfects things, who rules over things and perfects them. So essentially it surrounds all around those areas. When they say Hakim, they're referring to the person who is knowledgeable and owns the wisdom, I guess. Okay. So which also means kind of referring to a ruler. So a ruler essentially has to have these descriptions. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, when he's described by Al-Hakim, obviously, or Al-Hakam and Al-Hakim, because he separates or he rules between disputing parties, but he's the overall ruler of all things. That's his attributes, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned in the Quran, right? أَفَغَيْرَ اللَّهِ أَبْتَغِي حَكَمًا. Ibn Jarir had mentioned, he says, say, O Muhammad, there isn't, فَلَيْسَ لِي أَنْ أَتَعَدَّ حُكْمُهُ وَأَتَجَاوَزُهُ. It's not for me that I would go or cross the boundaries of his rule and go beyond that, because he is a just ruler. Hakam Ad, he is the just ruler. وَلَا قَائِلَ أَصْدَقَ مِنْهُ. And there's no person of more honesty or truth than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay. So essentially, when we talk about Hakam, which means that all the rule belongs to him. Okay. إِلَيْهِ الْحُكْمُ. By the way, what does Hakam actually mean in the Arabic language? It has a root, Hakama or Hakam. There's a meaning to it. No.
Okay, the Hakam, the root is I don't know what's it in English, where you used to direct your right, whatever it's the...
Yes, Hakam
so
al-Dabba,
it means that
right?
you
Not
have
direct,
the right judgment.
you prevent, it has to do with manna, right? To prevent.
You control it.
Well, not control, it means to prevent. Prevention.
Is it prevention?
Manna.
Is it to, like...
حكمت الدابة تمنع الدابة. It prevents it from going where you don't want it to go.
Where you don't want it.
So it essentially means, but it also means, its original word means to prevent from something going bad or chaotic or something, just in that area. So, which also, if you think about it, the rulings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of it prevents us from going astray, from harming ourselves, put it that way. Okay. That's why they're there, the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, Al-Hakim itself, so we're talking about Hakam and Hakim and Al-Hakim, it comes really from the meaning of perfection. When we talk about somebody who is wise, we always think of Hakim as somebody who is wise, is because they have perfected wisdom, essentially, knowledge, they perfected knowledge. Which means when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Hakim, which means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has perfected everything, all things. His planning has no errors in it. Okay? So whenever they say that, there is no slipping or mishappens or anything, errors in the planning of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's planning is complete. But also when we talk about al-hikmah is placing the right thing in the right place, at the right time. Right? So when you say Allah is Hakim, because He is perfect, all His planning is perfect, it gets executed at the right time, for the right person, in the right place. All these come from Hakim.
Is the wise also meaning wise?
So why Hakim is always translated as wise, but it has a deeper meaning. Hakim is a person who has, yet part of perfection is putting things in its right place at the right time for the right person. That is part of perfection.
It's a beautiful, right time, right place.
But anyway, this is essentially what Hakim means. So once we think of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His name as attribute Hakim, it really, so how should we as believers, how does it implement this? Al-Hakam, Al-Hakim, Al-Hakim, all these three names, one thing how it affects us is that we realize that all rule, that it's only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the absolute ruler. That there's no partnership in His ruling. Whatever He dictates is what should be implemented. We do not, go against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by passing our own rulings. Because really if you do that, you're doing one of two things. Either you're acknowledging that your ruling is a sub-ruling, lesser of quality and intelligence than Allah's, or that it's equal, or that it's better. If you say it's equal, you can rule by this, or you can rule by what I said, then this is a problem. Then you are sharik to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're an associate, you're associate to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But you're also saying to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that I also know as much as you know. Essentially, it is implemented in there. Because otherwise, why would you tell people rule by what I have made? When you group of people come together, this is the rule for it, and it contradicts Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's ruling, and you tell people you can use this one or this one, they're equally good. No, they're not equally good. If you say it's better, that's even worse. Okay? Because you are also accusing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala of not having wisdom, right? Foresight, perfection. But you have attained this essentially. If it's less than, then why are you ruling with anything else? Okay. But anyway, so we don't, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so as Muslims, when we say that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Hakim and Al-Hakam, we mean that He has, only Him subhanahu wa ta'ala has the right to pass the rulings. Jurisdiction, what is halal, what is haram. We stop at our boundaries. Okay. We do not cross that because it only belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So as a Muslim, this is our perspective of it. But also we understand that it is perfected. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's all rules and regulations are perfect. This is important because unfortunately we have a problem in implementing this from theory to implementation. Because if we believe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the ruler, the just, the one who has the right to pass the ruling, He judges between these slaves on the Day of Judgment, He is the one that has perfected everything, which means that all the regulations of Islam are perfect. Which means that this religion should be our reference point for everything. We should judge everything based on Islam. Because it's perfect. But in reality, quite often, we feel unsettled or weary of some of the rules and regulations because sometimes our center and our reference is not Islam. Sometimes sometimes we do not judge things by Islam. We judge Islam based on what we perceive, which is wrong. It's the other way around. So sometimes we judge the rules and regulations of Islam based on our social norms. Right? We say, well, I'm not comfortable with this because in our society, this, and that. It shouldn't be that way, it should be the other way around. What is in our society is wrong because Islam said so. Right? Because this is their religion, this is the perfect religion, the religion of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When we have problems of, for example, gender relations or gender norms or gender roles or any of these things, issues with, for example, we have feminism, for example, right? I'm just going to use that as an example, right? Why do we need that if we believe that Islam is just, is perfect, placed everything from the wise, he has placed everything in his place at the right time, has given everybody what is their right, what is perfect for them, and all these things. Why do we need the other side? Yes, they say it is justice for women. It is true. If there's a problem, you don't go to these, you go back to Islam. If there's something wrong, it's because Islam is not being implemented as it should be. So you go back to Islam and correct the actions of people based on Islam. You don't look for solutions outside. If Islam is our reference, we don't need to look outside. If we believe it is perfect in everything for all ways of our life, we do not need to go outside of it. We really don't. But also any other idea we come up with, we have to measure it. Is it permissible in Islam? Is it valid or it's not? Is that understood? These are some of the implementation of us believing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is wise, Al-Hakim, Al-Hakim, Al-Hakam, and all these things. I think I'm going to stop here because I don't want to take too long, because the jinn aspect is going to take us. But is everyone understanding of the meaning of how it's meant and so forth?
Is they're none of them sifa dhatiyya, they're all not right. Al-Hakam is not sifa dhatiyya, it's a regular.
What do you mean?
Sifat dhatiyya, we talked about the what is it? Yeah, the self attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
Hakim.
No, but Al-Hakim, no, but we call people Hakim. We give
No.
them
Al-Hakim.
okay. So
But also Hakam, it is a slight for somebody to be called Abul Hakam.
okay.
Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is Al-Hakam, right?
Okay.
This is why, for example, Abu Jahl, when he used to be called, his kunya was Abul Hakam, so the Prophet said, no, he is Abu Jahl, not Abul Hakam.
Hakim and Hakam are both, Al-Hakim and Al-Hakam are both attributes of Allah, right?
So those, okay, so every name is an attribute. Every name needs an attribute. So Al-Hakam, Al-Hakim, and Al-Hakim, these are all names and attributes, qualities of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? Alright, so we're going to move to Jinn. So what does Jinn mean?
Creation, punishment, terror.
No, I didn't say what are they. I said what does it mean?
Wow.
The word Jinn, what does it mean? Hidden, excellent. Right? It means hidden, concealed. Jinn are called Jinn because they are hidden, they're concealed. Do we see them? Not necessarily, right? But also, for example, in Arabic word, the fetus, what's it called in Arabic? The fetus. The fetus in the womb, what's it called in Arabic? Janeen. Why? Because it's hidden, right? A person who is crazy, what's it called in Arabic? Junna. Why? Because his mind is concealed. Junna, right? Allah has the word of concealment. So jinn are called jinn because they hide from the eyes, right? They conceal themselves from the eyes. That's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, إِنَّهُ يَرَاكُمْ هُوَ وَقَبِيلُهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا تَرَوْنَهُ. إِنَّهُ يَرَاكُمْ, referring to the jinn and the shaitan, يَرَاكُمْ, they see you, هُوَ وَقَبِيلُهُ, and his friend and partners, مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا تَرَوْنَهُ, from where you do not see them. Because we do not see them, they are around us, but we really do not see them. Okay? But anyway, so, however, if we don't see them, do all creatures not see jinn? Obviously angels see them, right? But I'm talking about creatures in the world around us. Dogs see them. And donkeys. No, it is true. Dogs and donkeys. That is true. So the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned in a hadith in Abi Dawood and Musnad ibn Ahmad. So I'm going to mention the hadith. Just bear with me. I'm going to mention the hadith. So Jabir ibn Abdullah had mentioned, the Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا سَمِعْتُمْ نُبَاحَ الْكِلَابِ وَنَهِيقَ الْحِمَارِ بِاللَّيْلِ فَتَعَوَّذُوا مِنَ بِاللَّهِ فَإِنَّهُنَّ يَرَيْنَ مَا لَا تَرَوْنَ. Referring to the shayateen. So the Prophet ﷺ said, if you heard the barking of the dog or the braying of the donkey, braying is the sound that the donkey makes, okay? At night, then seek refuge in Allah. Say, A'udhu Billah, right? Seek refuge in Allah because they see what you do not see. And modern science has shown that different animals see in different wavelengths. Okay. Some animals can see like infrared, others ultraviolet, things that we do not see. So different wavelengths that we do not see. But the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned this. Now, there are things that are shared between humans and jinns, and things obviously that are different. You guys agree? They're different than us, is that right? Yes? Yes? You all agree? Okay. Now, there are things that are shared between us. Okay. So some of the things that are shared between us include our intellect. So these are also creatures that have intellect. Okay. They have perceptions similar to when we have perceive things. We intellect, we rationalize things, we think about things. They are also legally liable in the eyesight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, similar to how we are liable. What does that mean?
Because they have the free will.
They have free will, that's true, but we're referring to taklif, right? Taklif, which means that they are also obligated to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, similar to how we are obligated to worship Allah. This comes from the verse of the Quran, وَمَا خَلَقْتُ الْجِنَّ وَالْإِنسَ إِلَّا لِيَعْبُدُونِ. Have not created jinn or ins except to worship me. So they are legally liable. It's called taklif, that they need to work, they have to worship Allah. They have the ability to choose evil and good. We have the ability to choose evil and good. Unfortunately, we have more of an inclination towards. Are you sure? It's kind of funny. Everybody assumes that everybody's evil, right? No, we shouldn't do that, by the way, right? We should always assume the good, right? There's always good in everybody. The fitra is usually to have good inclinations. Yes, there are something that's called proclivities. Proclivities are your negative desires. They are there, but we should not always assume the worst of people. But anyway, so they have, they can have the ability to pick, or the choice to pick evil or good. However, they differ from humans in many things. One of the most important things is what? The origin of creation. Is that right? The origin of creation. We are created from clay or mud or whatever the case is. And jinn are created from?
Fire.
Just fire?
Smokeless.
Smoke. Now what does that mean?
Fire doesn't burn.
No, like when you burn these natural gas, they don't have smoke in it. They just burn. While you burn wood fire, it makes a smoke. That's a different.
Not after it burns
different type
well.
of the fire.
Not after it burns well. Once it starts burning well, you don't see smoke anymore, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's true.
Is that right?
The flame.
So okay, so for example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَقَدْ خَلَقْنَا الْإِنسَانَ مِنْ صَلْصَالٍ مِنْ حَمَإٍ مَسْنُونٍ وَخَلَقْنَا الْجَانَّ وَالْجَانَّ خَلَقْنَاهُ مِنْ قَبْلُ مِنْ نَارِ السَّمُومِ. نار السموم is scorching fire. Really hot fire. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَخَلَقَ الْجَنَّ مِنْ مَارِجٍ مِنْ نَارٍ. This is where the smokeless flame comes from. So Abdullah ibn Abbas, for example, and Ikrimah and Mujahid, they said marij min nar, which is taraf al-lahib, which means the edge of the fire, from the edge of the fire. Okay. Which is essentially like, they said khalisu wa ahsanuhu, the most purest form of the fire and the best part of it. Really, because that's the part that almost burns the most. Like the outer edges, right?
Most intense.
The most intense, right? But anyway, essentially they're created from this. Now, there are different types of jinn, similar to how there are different types of angels, different rules, they have different things. So this comes, by the way, all these things we can only figure these things out from revelation. Okay. We don't just sit there and talk to jinn and ask them, what do you do, what do you look like, all these things. Some people claim to do that, which is kind of interesting. But anyway, but the majority of the unseen should be only, the sources from it is the revelation, either Quran or Sunnah. So the Prophet ﷺ over here in a hadith narrated by Hakim al-Bayhaqi, he said that al-jinnu thalath al-asnaf, there are three types of jinn. And then he said, فَصَنْفٌ يَطِيرُ فِي الْهَوَاءِ وَصَنْفٌ حَيَّاتٌ وَكِلَابٌ وَصَنْفٌ يَحُلُّونَ وَيَضْعَنُونَ. The Prophet ﷺ said, a type of them, they fly in the air. So some of them fly, some of them don't. So a type flies in the air. And a type are in the form of dogs and snakes. And a type, يَحِلُّونَ وَيَضْعَنُونَ, which means they settle and they travel. So some are constantly moving, and sometimes they stay and they move. And so they're on the ground, they're on constant move, whatever the case is. And obviously from the jinn, some are obviously believers and others are non-believers. So there are Muslim jinn. They might not be the majority, but there are Muslim jinn. Now where do we get this from?
Because they listen to the
Hadith.
Quran.
Okay.
And then they go with their,
So we have this from the Sunnah, but also the Quran itself, right?
Yeah, the one surah there.
Surah Al-Jinn itself. إِنَّا سَمِعْنَا قُرْآنًا عَجَبًا, right? وأن Surah Al-Jinn itself, right? قرآن عجبا يهدي إلى الرشد فآمنا به. It guides to the right path, and so we believed in it. But also they say وأن منا القاسطون مسلمون ومنا القاسطون. Some of them are the Muslims and some of them are the deviant. So they tell us that the jinn itself in the Quran, they say that they're different groups. Alright, now one of the questions, obviously Iblis is a shaitan, right? Adam is, so he's the father of, Adam is the father of all humans. Now the question is Iblis the father of all jinn? No. Are you sure?
Because he was not the first one.
Really? How do you know that?
He was among the jinns. This is our word. He was among the jinns, and by prostration of Allah, he was elevated to that high level. That
It's true, he's among the jinn, so he could have been the first one and had wives and kids, and so there's many of them.
The something that what I heard that he was among the jinn, and by prostration of Allah, he was elevated to the level of angels. So it was there were a lot of jinns.
Oh, level of, he was not an angel, level of worshipping with the angels. But it's still the question, is he the father of jinn?
I don't think so. Because Alaswandana never told this.
Okay, so we don't know.
Yeah, we don't know.
Okay, we don't know. I like that answer. Allah Alam. We really have no evidence, to be honest. We have no evidence whatsoever. If Iblis, he is the father of jinn or not. Now, here's another question. Do jinn die or not? Do they die? Well, what about Iblis, man? He's been along for a long time.
Maybe Iblis is transferred into other religion. Maybe he died, somebody else took his place.
No, nobody can take his place.
Maybe he's immortal.
Wait, I thought you said they died.
I ask Allah to let him go to the judgment.
Excellent.
That maybe
He asked Allah to let him live until the day of judgment.
So maybe allow it.
So there's an exception for Iblis. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him immortality. No, I wouldn't say immortality, because immortality means that you never die,
Yes.
right? Long life until the day of judgment.
Yes.
Because eventually he will die. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كُلُّ مَنْ عَلَيْهَا فَانٍ. Everything on it will cease to exist. Okay. Will cease to exist. So كُلُّ مَنْ عَلَيْهَا فَانٍ. But anyway, but Iblis essentially, he is a jinn. We talked about this before. He's not an angel. In the biblical form, by the way, Christians don't have jinn. Christians only have demons. Demons. And Iblis for them is a fallen angel. Okay.
So what's a demon?
Shaitan.
No, we call them shaitan and jinn. To them it's this other evil entity. It's demons. They're not jinn.
But they look like the devil. Look.
Well, you know what they look like?
So they believe only in the
No, their perception, no, by the way, their perception of Iblis is an angel. Like if you look at movies, they draw him with wings. He's a fallen angel. Okay? He rules demons, right? Because they are his subordinates. Okay.
Once you said that they have, in the Christianity, they have the good angels and the bad angels. They don't have.
Yeah, angels, they can fall.
Yeah.
In Muslims, we don't believe that. Muslims never believe the angels don't. They never disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? But also, Iblis was never an angel. He was a jinn. We don't have demons. We have jinn. Okay? Alright, now something about their characteristics in terms
I
of...
want to clarify one thing. The shaitan, what we refer are only jinns.
Say that again?
The shaitan, what we call shaitan.
Yes.
Is jinn only?
Yes. Well, there are humans that we call them shaitan.
Yeah.
That's right.
Shaitan just means
It's a
deviant,
deviant,
right?
deviant.
A person who's extremely evil, bad. And so there are shayateen and insu and jinn. So shaitan from ins and shaitan from jinn. Like, the very deviant, defying humans. Sometimes they call them shaitan. Somebody calls you, hey, you're a shaitan, right?
I mean, they are not separate entity. That's what I'm saying.
What do you mean?
The shaitan is not a separate entity. It is one among either in the jinn or one
No,
among
so when we refer to a shaitan, usually we refer to them as a jinn
jinn.
because they're a defined deviant. Okay. All right. Some of the descriptions regarding what they look like and their strength, perhaps. Okay. So Allah Subhanahu wa Taala had given, generally speaking, I'm just going to give you the general thing and then give you some of the evidence from the Quran and the Sunnah, or where we got this from. So we believe that the jinn actually have powers and abilities that were never given to human, like immense strength, never given to human, such as, for example, extreme speed, right? Fastness, speed, movement, speed, very fast. Okay, the ability to move quickly from one place to another in an instant, essentially. The ability to create and build huge things, monuments, whatever the case is. Now, all these things we do have evidences for. Okay. Somebody said yes. So from where? Sulaiman. Excellent. Exactly. Sayyidina Sulaiman. So, for example, when Sulaiman alayhi salam, when he was talking about the Saba, right, the queen of Saba, Sheba, they call her Sheba, right? When he said, "Man ya'tini," like, who would come with her throne? قال عفريت من الجن أنا آتيه بك قبل أن تقوم من مقامك. One of them said, I will bring you your throne before you get up from your place. And you have to remember, Sulaiman was in one place, and Saba is completely in a different country, completely bad. So one of the jinn said, I will bring you the throne before you get up from your place. So this tells you the strength and the ability of some of these jinns. And by the way, her throne was like a huge throne, like, it was one of the magnificence and beauties of the world. And so he said, I will do it in that quick. I'll be quickly there in one country, pick up the throne and come back to you. Now, and he said, وَإِنِّي عَلَيْهِ لَقَوِيٌّ أَمِينٌ, I have the strength and ability to do it. However, another jinn said, قَالَ الَّذِي عِنْدُهُ عِلْمٌ مِنَ الْكِتَابِ, one of the jinn who has some knowledge of the book, أَنَا آتِيكَ بِهِ قَبْلَ أَنْ يَرْتَدَّ إِلَيْكَ طَرْفُكَ, I will bring it to you before your eyesight returns to you. Blink of an eye, right? And so obviously this is a very much stronger, faster jinn. So with a blink of an eye, the throne was in front of Sulaiman alayhi salam. So they give you some of these strengths. So they made, but they also, so this is some of their abilities. One of the other abilities is that they had the ability to create and build a lot of things. So even for Sulaiman alayhi salam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, and this is Surah Saba, يَعْمَلُونَ لَهُ مَا يَشَاءُ مِنْ مَحَارِيبَ وَتَمَاثِيلَ وَجِفَانٍ كَالْجَوَابِ وَقُدُورٍ رَاسِيَاتٍ. Okay, so which means that they made for him, for Sulaiman alayhi salam, what he willed from elevated chambers, maharib. Okay, elevated chambers. وَتَمَاثِيل, statues. وَجِفَانٍ كَالْجَوَابِ, bowls like reservoirs. So these are reservoirs of water, but huge bowls like reservoirs. وَقُدُورٍ رَاسِيَاتٍ, which means stationary kettles. So whatever Sulaiman wanted, they would create for him. Right? An issue with the statues, right? Is it permissible to build statues?
No.
Wait a second. The Quran says, وَيَعْمَلُونَ لَهُ مَا يَشَاءُ مِنْ مَحَارِيبَ وَتَمَاثِيلَ. They create for him what he wills from elevated chambers and statues. So Sulaiman had statues.
So maybe the statues of the non-living stuff.
Why are you making that assumption? It just says statues. Statue is a general term in Arabic, which means that all forms of statues are valid.
Could it be a pillar?
No, statue is not a pillar. Nice try though. I like it.
These are statues of what? Like
Just statues.
Maybe it was not haram at that time, I don't know. Maybe it's something that was just in Islam that was
Okay.
after the
Now it's not
idols
allowed,
and the Kaaba and the worships and all that stuff that it became haram.
Okay.
That's possible. It's very possible.
No, that is the correct answer.
That's correct answer.
That is good sense. See, when Islam comes, right?
statues
There are things that were permissible in other faiths,
Faith, they were just knowledge.
and some things that were not permissible in other faiths. In our religion, they're permissible. Okay. Islam, when it came, it abrogated all other religions. Okay. And so at one time what could have been halal in our religion is haram, we're supposed to follow that. One thing might be not haram in one religion, but for us it is halal. There's no problem with it. So for example, for Bani Israel, they had a lot of restrictions because of how stubborn they were and like, how inquisitive they were. They asked so many questions, not out of desire to implement, but as more of a challenge. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would restrict the regulations for them. But in our religion, this restriction was elevated, for example. So, but anyway, our religion overall, it abrogates all other rules and regulations because this is the final revelation.
Oh, question.
Yes,
I think I didn't follow through. Was statues haram or halal?
in our religion it is haram.
Haram. You can't keep statues, right?
No.
And if anything.
But now the debate is what constitutes a non-permissible statue. Right? This is an entire fiqh debate. The majority of scholars say that a statue is considered a statue, or a statue is no longer considered haram if what is removed for it, the organism cannot live without it. So for example, if you just have a head, okay, they don't consider that a statue that is haram. The majority of scholars. Because you cannot live without a body, is that right? If you have a body without a head, they don't consider that a statue. Now if you have a body without an arm, they would consider that a statue, because you don't need an arm to live. Right? That's the majority of scholars. Shafi'is have a more specific idea of, or a view of what constitutes a non-permissible statue. It has to do with the head. Okay? So you cannot draw a head with all the details of the eyes and so forth. But generally this just gives you a broad sense of it.
How about animals which are like,
So I'm talking, so anything that is living, it includes animals. If you have, if that form is in a way that that organism cannot live without it, then the majority of scholars don't consider that haram. Okay? Alright. Can we see jinn? Some people do. So I'm sitting here and I can tell you I can see a jinn here. They what?
Don't tell us after.
Don't tell you, I'm not.
If Allah
I'd be lying if I would.
Allah gave them power to manifest, so maybe
Good, excellent. Allah gave them a form to manifest, so they shape shift. You know what that means, right?
they change shape?
They can change forms, that is true, they shape shift. So, there are incidents in the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ when the Quran had mentioned that the shaitan had come in a form of human. You know how the angels can shape shift into the form of humans? The jinn have the ability to do so. And in fact, we have on the battle of Badr, when they were deciding what to do and stuff like that, Iblis himself came to the people of Quraysh, and the image of one of the leaders of the tribes, Suraqa ibn Malik, right? And he went there so that he encouraged him to go into battle, and he told him I'm going to protect you. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned this in the Quran. He said, وَإِذْ زَيَّنَ الشَّيْطَانُ أَعْمَالَهُمْ وَقَالَ لَا غَالِبَ لَكُمُ الْيَوْمِ مِنَ النَّاسِ وَإِنِّي جَارٌ لَكُمْ. So he decorated and designed their actions for them, and he told them there is nobody going to defeat you today. So it's almost like blowing into their self-esteem and American arrogance, giving them the big head. And he said, لَا غَالِبَ لَكُمُ الْيَوْمِ. Nobody will defeat you. مِنَ النَّاسِ وَإِنِّي جَارٌ لَكُمْ. I will protect you. I got your back. However, what happened? فَلَمَّا تَرَاءَتِ الْفِئَتَانِ. When the both groups, the Muslims and non-Muslims, had seen each other, نَكَصَ عَلَى عَقِبَيْهِ, because he also, he نَكَصَ عَلَى عَقِبَيْهِ, which means he clasped back on his heels, which means he turned around and ran away. وَقَالَ إِنِّي بَرِيءٌ مِّنْكُمْ. I'm innocent of you. إِنِّي أَرَى مَا لَا تَرَوْنَ. I see what you do not see. What did Iblis see? Angels on the battlefield, right? But the funny thing is, he said what? إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهِ. إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهِ وَاللَّهُ شَدِيدُ الْعِقَابِ. And Allah is severe in His punishment. So he ran away, so ran away, and people, Abu Jahl is like, where are you going? He said, إِنِّي أَرَى مَا لَا تَرَوْنَ إِنِّي أَخَافُ اللَّهِ, right? I'm not doing this, forget it, you guys go ahead. Okay? Now, there is many incidents that they, not necessarily Iblis, but a shaitan would come in the form of human. So when they come in the form of human, we would see them. We were able to see them. We would not know, obviously, that they're jinn or not, right? Because they're still in the form of human. A famous story in Sahih Bukhari, I mentioned this quickly. This happened to Abu Hurairah, and he tells us that Abu Hurairah said that the Prophet ﷺ had put him as a guard on the zakat, right? Zakat Ramadan, which is zakat al-fitr. when people gather the food, it gets distributed and so forth. So the Prophet ﷺ had put him as a guard to protect it. So what happened was that Abu Hurairah, he heard a sound and he saw a person eating from the food or taking away from the food. And so he caught him. He said, I'm going to take you to the Messenger of Allah. He said, please let me go. I'm a person who's extremely poor and I have dependents on me and I have children. They need food. So Abu Hurairah felt like mercy for him. So what did he do? He let him go. And next morning when the Prophet ﷺ met him, he said, Ya Abu Hurairah, ma fa'ala asubaka al-bariha? Ya, oh Abu Hurairah, what did your prisoner do yesterday? So the Prophet knew about it. So he said, Ya Rasulullah, he had complained about his need, that he's a person in need, and he has dependents, so I felt mercy for him, so I let him go. So the Prophet ﷺ said, Ama innahu qad kadabaka, verily he had lied to you, and he will come back. So Abu Hurairah knows that the Prophet ﷺ says the truth. So he waited that night for that person to come back again, and sure enough, he caught him a second time, right, eating from the food. And so he caught him and he said, I caught you, I'm going to take the Prophet ﷺ. The man repeated the same statement to him. He said, I'm so poor, I'm so hungry, I have kids, I have children, I'll never do this again. So he felt mercy for him and he let him go. Then the next morning the same thing happened. The Prophet ﷺ said, what happened to your prisoner? He told him the story. He said, he is a liar and he will come back. So this is the third time. So when Abu Hurairah says, what, this is khalas. So he waited for him and he caught him, but this time he said, this is the third, I'm not going to go, I will take it to the Prophet ﷺ. So the man said, let me go. I'm going to teach you of words that Allah would benefit you with. So he said, okay. So he told him, before you go to bed, what do? You recite Ayat al-Kursi. Allahu la ilaha illa huwa al-hayyul qayyum, until the end of the ayah. He said, if you do so, Allah will protect you that night, and no shaitan will come close to you. Right? And so the next morning, he went to the Prophet ﷺ and he told him what happened. So the Prophet ﷺ said, أَمَا إِنَّهُ قَدْ صَدَقَكَ وَهُوَ كَذُوبٌ. He said the truth this time, and quite often he is actually a liar. And then he told Abu Hurairah, do you know who has been talking the past 3 days? So he said, Allahu A'lam. So he said, that shaitan. It is a shaitan. So they do come in different forms. But also, as we mentioned before, they come also in the form of dogs and snakes. So all the dogs we see outside are, I can't say all of them, right?
No, not all.
Not necessarily.
They usually say black dog.
Black dogs. There's a lot of neighbors that have black dogs, so they have a shaitan with them.
I don't know.
We're talking about purely black dogs.
Not,
Okay.
not.
Completely pure black dogs. Not a dot of white there anywhere. Okay? Nothing white. Not a single hair that is white. Just completely, absolutely black.
So for sure they are jinns?
Well, how often do you find a dog that is completely black? Completely, absolutely black. Not one wear, not white hair. Nothing, no patch of white.
Then they are not.
You hardly find any completely black dogs. I have never seen one. I've seen black dogs and I look at them, I'm staring at them, right? And then I see a few things, right? But the completely black dogs, the Prophet ﷺ said, so the Prophet ﷺ said, Al-Kalb al-Aswad shaitan, right? The one who is black is shaitan. That's called al-Aswad Bahim, right? Completely, absolutely, 100% black. Okay? So that is a shaitan. But they also can come in the form of snakes, yes.
If suppose you don't know and you start reciting Ayatul Kursi, if it's shaitan, it will run away.
What if it's a strong shaitan?
Ayatul Kursi is stronger.
We'll talk about that, inshallah.
Alright.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Now, the form of snake, we also say they come in the form of snakes. Do we have any evidence for that?
Yes, there's a hadith when
In
some
Jannah,
Sahaba
they say.
entered.
In Jannah.
In Jannah.
Wait. This is interesting.
Yeah.
In Jannah?
In
Came-
Jannah, the shaitan enters in the form of a snake. Mostly scholars say that.
Really? Where do we know that from?
It's a story.
You know, this is only in the biblical,
It came in the
books.
peacocks.
We have that nowhere in the Sunnah nor the Quran. This is more of a biblical interpretation of it. Right? It's about niyat. So no, it was not, that's not, there are other evidence, but that's not the evidence. But there are other evidences. The Prophet ﷺ had mentioned it, yes.
So there was these that when one Sahabi, he enters the home and he
Excellent.
wife said there is a snake
All right.
in his bed. And
So the
he
story
killed
is,
him.
so this story is mentioned in Sahih Muslim. Okay. So this was in Ghazwat al-Khandaq, and one of these young Sahabas was actually newlywed. Okay. And so, and he would ask permission from the Prophet ﷺ to go during the day to visit his wife. And so one day he was given permission to leave, and he took, so the Prophet ﷺ told him, take your weapons with you, because I fear, from Bani Qurayza, right? I'm afraid that the people from Banu Sulaym ibn Qurayza, the other tribe, might betray us, and I fear for you, so take your weapon with you. So he took his spear with him. Now as he got closer to his house, he found his wife standing outside between the door and the house. And now, of course, she was not really wearing her hijab, and so he got extremely jealous. And so what did he do? He almost killed her out of jealousy, right? And she said, wait, go inside and look why I'm standing outside. So he walked into the house and he saw on the bed a huge snake. So what did he do? He killed it with a spear, right? Now once he did that, the hadith mentions we don't know who died first or faster or quicker before the other. Was it the snake or the Sahaba? Right? He almost kind of went into convulsions and just died. And so when they told the Prophet ﷺ, the Prophet ﷺ said, ask forgiveness for your friend. He said, إِنَّ بِالْمَدِينَةِ جِنًّا قَدْ أَسْلَمُوا. There are in Medina jinn that have become Muslim. فَإِذَا رَأَيْتُم مِّنْهُمْ شَيْئًا. If you see some of them, referring to the snakes, فَآذِنُوهُ ثَلَاثَةَ أَيَّامٍ. Right? Tell them you have 3 days to leave. فَإِن بَدَ لَكُمْ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ فَاقْتُلُوهُ. If they come after 3 days, then kill them. Okay? فَإِنَّهُمَا هُوَ شَيْطَانٌ. Verily then it is a shaitan. So the Prophet ﷺ is saying that this individual had died because he actually had killed a jinn.
Why did he become a snake?
They came into that form. They come in that form sometimes.
Oh, they come in that.
Yes. So there's other hadith, he said, the Prophet ﷺ, so that's why the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, especially in Medina, if there are specific kinds of snakes, there are snakes that are not, we know that they're not, jinn, specific ones. The Prophet ﷺ told us, if you see them, kill them right away. But there are other types of snake, if they're in the house, especially in Medina, the Prophet ﷺ told them, tell them to leave the house, and give them 3 days. If they appear again, then they are not a Muslim jinn, then they are a shaitan. Okay?
So when you see a snake, how do you know?
Well, you have to know the different types of snakes. Do we have to
It's
look at
like,
this?
no, because I mean, you have larger snakes, you have lots of snakes, small snakes all around.
I know, but those don't like to stay in your house. They leave right away.
Or did they bite though?
What?
Those snakes bite you?
No.
Well, this guy, he didn't have to bite him. It's a jinn, right? So when he stabbed it, it killed him immediately.
No, what I'm saying, there's those snakes who transform them into a jinn, who are a jinn. Do they also bite human being or not?
I would assume if they're snakes, they could bite and kill you, maybe perhaps if they want to.
They could bite, right?
And you kick them out? Well, you tell them to leave, right?
So the British.
How did you know? I mean, that's my question is like.
So he said, tell them, if they're Muslims, they will leave the house. Give them 3 days.
Okay, so.
They will leave the house. They will not appear.
Leave the house.
Well, you will leave the house, I'm sure you will. All right, I'll have a better solution for you. All right? Call animal, the animal shelter. They'll take care of it.
Control.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Animal control, okay? All right, anyway, so we're gonna go into more of the where they live and what they eat. Okay, so obviously because they're around us, they have a place to live, they eat and do these things. So what do they eat?
Bones.
Bones and probably other things, right? No, they eat your food too, right? Not just bones. There is a difference between the Muslim jinn and the non-Muslim jinn. So for the Muslim jinn, they came to the Prophet ﷺ, this hadith is mentioned in Sahih Muslim. The companions actually had they were traveling, and so they would sleep at night. However, they were looking for the Prophet ﷺ one night, they couldn't find him. فَالْتَمَسْنَاهُ فِي الْأَوْدِيَةِ وَالشِّعَابِ. So they looked him in the valleys and other places. They could not find the Prophet ﷺ, and so they knew something would happen, right? They got scared because they thought he either got assassinated or some of the jinn might have taken him and done something to him, the shayateen. And so, however, they couldn't find the Prophet ﷺ. When they woke up the next morning, they saw the Prophet ﷺ coming towards them, right? And so he was coming from جاء من قبل حراء. So from the mountain we know Jabal Hira, the cave Hira. He was coming from that direction, and they asked him, where did you go? So he told them, he said, أتاني داعي الجن. One of the callers of the jinn came to me, and so I went with him. Now this was obviously a Muslim jinn, or one of the jinns. And so the Prophet said, فقرأت عليهم القرآن. So I asked, I recited them the Quran, and then he took the companions to show them where they were sitting, and he showed them their traces and their fires. And so what they did was they asked the Prophet ﷺ, تسألوه الزاد, provisions, فقال لكم كل عظم ذكر اسم الله عليه يقع في أيديكم أوفر ما يكون لحما. He told them, you guys have every bone. Once the name of Allah is recited on it, it will become as most, أوفر, which means like an amount, a huge amount of meat as it was before. So this is their food. It becomes meat. وكل بعرة عالف لدوابكم, and the feces of our animals, what we used to ride, cattle and herds, is the food of their cattle and animals, which tells you that the jinn also have their own cattle and animals, right? Their mounts and so forth. So the Prophet ﷺ said, that's why he said, do not tastanju, which means do not wipe yourself with what?
Bone.
With bones or the remnants of the animals, the ba', right? Whether it's from the hardened ones from the sheep or the cattle or whatever the case is. He said, don't do stinjat with it because it is the food of the jinn and their animals. Okay. Now they do, so when we talk about food, we're going to talk about this. So this is their food, but there's the non-Muslim ones. It's a bit different. But also they have a way of eating, the non-Muslim shaitan. They eat with their left hand. Shaitan eats with his left hand, the non-Muslim ones. So for example, Abdullah ibn Umar, Sahih Muslim, this is why the Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا أَكَلَ أَحَدُكُمْ فَلْيَأْكُلْ بِيَمِينِهِ. Right? وَإِذَا شَرِبَ فَلْيَشْرِبْ فَلْيَشْرَبْ بِيَمِينِهِ. If any of you is going to eat, then let him eat with his right hand. If he's going to drink, then let him drink with his right hand. فَإِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ يَأْكُلُ بِشِمَالِهِ وَيَشْرَبُ بِشِمَالِهِ. The shaitan eats with his left hand and drinks with his left hand. Okay? Alright? They also live, I'm going to get back to the food again. Okay? Now, where do they live? They inhabit your houses. Okay? They inhabit places of filth and najasa. They inhabit things that are almost considered things that are just broken down places, uninhabited, things that are in the open. So they stay in all these things. This is why the Prophet said, I'm going to tell you that they actually inhabit your house, and we're going to get to the food part. This is why Abdullah ibn Jabir, for example, he said, the Prophet said, in the Sahih Muslim, إِذَا دَخَلَ الرَّجُلُ بَيْتَهُ فَذَكَرَ اللَّهِ عِنْدَ دُخُولِهِ وَعِنْدَ طَعَامِهِ. So if a person enters his house, right, he would mention the name of Allah when he's entering the house and also when he eats. This is why we enter home, we say Bismillah, right? We say Bismillah. And then before we eat, we say Bismillah. If you do that, the shaitan, قال الشيطان لا مبيت لكم ولا عشاء. There is no place for you to reside in today, nor food. So what do they eat sometimes? Our own food. Alright. If the person, فإذا دخل فلم يذكر الله عند دخوله, if he enters the house and he does not say Bismillah, and remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, mention the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the shaitan says what? أَدْرَكْتُمُ الْمَبِيتِ. You have found a place to sleep in tonight. So he's not just talking about himself, he's talking about also his friends. So if you enter the house without saying Bismillah, guess who's sleeping with you tonight? Alright?
Did we say Bismillah or Assalamu alaikum?
No.
Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
You say Bismillah and say Salamu alaikum for the inhabitants of the place.
I thought you say Bismillah to the angels or in the house.
No, you say Salamu alaikum.
Sorry, Assalamu alaikum.
Right? To the inhabitants of the house. The Bismillah to prevent the shaitan from entering.
Okay.
Now, if you do not say Bismillah entering, but you also do not say Bismillah, right? The shaitan says, أَدْرَكْتُمُ الْمَبِيتُ وَالْعَشَاء. It's a party. Now you have a place to sleep and something to eat. Okay? It's kind of funny. I saw a cartoon character.
Is it hadith
Kind of-
or is it?
No, this is a hadith.
Hadith?
Yeah, it's a Muslim. So it's kind of funny. I've seen this cartoon drawing one time. A person walking around, and his shaitan is walking around behind him. Okay, and two individuals, and they met each other. So one is meeting the other. The shaitan behind one is nice and fat and plump, right? And he's nicely combed and nicely dressed. and the shaitan behind the other one just kind of frail and skinny, disheveled, not wearing good. And so the shaitan, the fat one, is telling the skinny one, he's like, "Man, what's up? What happened to you?" Right? He says, "This guy says Bismillah on everything, right? On food, on clothing." So I'm like, he's not kept, he doesn't eat very well. While the other guy, obviously, he's eating very well, clothed very well, right? But I don't know if that's true, by the way. But anyway, just an interesting cartoon.
It's not that they live in oceans.
Sorry?
In oceans, somewhere I heard that the shaitan, the place of inhabitant for shaitan is an ocean. Jinn.
No, it's not an ocean. No, not necessarily oceans. They could be around in oceans, but they also inhabit your bathrooms. They say najasa. They can sleep at night in your house. They don't say Bismillah. They are in things that are just like, they say kharib, which means just ruined place, places that are not, like, habitable, right? Places where there's garbage, stuff like that. Yes.
I don't know if it's correct or not, but every human being is born with the jinn as a part.
Yes, you do have your jinn with you. So we're going to talk about that in a bit.
It's true, right?
Not in your pocket, but with you. We'll get to that,
Okay.
inshallah. All right. So, but it's also important that we say, okay. Now remember we said that they see you, right? This is why when you take off your clothes, you need to say Bismillah. This is mentioned in Sunnah Tirmidhi. Ali ibn Abi Talib said, the Prophet ﷺ said, سَتْرُ مَا بَيْنَ أَعْيُنِ الْجِنِّ وَعَوْرَاتِ ابْنِ آدَمْ إِذَا دَخَلَ أَحَدُهُمْ الْخَلَاءَ أَنْ يَقُولَ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ. That the سَتْرُ مَا بَيْنَ أَعْيُنِ الْجِنِّ, satr, which means the covering, right, or concealment, okay? The shielding between the eyes of jinn and the awra of the human being, if he enters al-khala, which where he does his business, the bathroom nowadays, is to say Bismillah. Which means if you don't Bismillah, guess who's checking you out? The jinn. Okay? They don't care, right? But this is one thing. But this is also why we enter the bathroom, we say Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubuthi wal khaba'ith. So you should say Bismillah, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-khubuthi wal khaba'ith.
Now they are not there anymore, they leave. They're gone.
I would hope they're gone. What's the relationship with humans right now? Because remember we talked about the relationship between angels and humans. Now there's obviously a relationship between humans and jinn. Now the overall general relationship, now remember there are Muslim jinns, but it seems that the majority of jinn are not Muslim. So the overall general relationship is a relationship of animosity and hatred. Where the jinn, I think, takes it upon himself that he would stand in the path between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to move you away from the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is where it comes in that to each one of us we have a jinn with us. Okay? You have a jinn with us. Now remember their speed, their strength, their abilities and all these things. So you have this powerful creature that is with you all the time. However, I'm just going to say to this right now and then we're gonna go on. But really they do not have control over you. They don't have any control over you. So when somebody says something wrong, or in our youth, we tell them, why do you do this? He would say, the shaitan made me do it. That is not true. Right?
So how do they get hold of your feelings, emotions?
You know what? They don't get control of it. They just do waswasa. That's it. They don't have control over you. They just whispering, putting thoughts in your head. Okay, so for example, I'm gonna give you the relationship. I'm gonna give you some of the interactions from the hadith. But anyway, these are like their powers are actually, even though they have their strength, they are limited. So they have no control over you. However, they flow inside your body similar to how your blood flows into you. Right?
That's my question. That they get into your body too.
No, they flow. The Prophet said, Adam. So they flow almost like the way how they flow, but they don't control you. Two different things. They do waswasa for you. They have no control of you. They are unable to open doors, okay, or remove covers from on top of food if you do certain things. They have limits in their abilities. Right? So we're going to all talk about all these things. So I'm going to give you a few hadith of verses of Quran. So for example, the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned hadith of Ibn Mas'ud. He said, مَا مِنْكُمْ إِلَّا أَحَدٍ إِلَّا وَقَدْ وُكِّلَ بِهِ قَارِنٌ مِنْ الْجِنِّ. There's none of you except that he has been partnered with his partner from the jinn. And so obviously they asked, not even you, O Messenger of Allah. He said, not even me. However, إِنَّ اللَّهَ أَعَانَنِي عَلَيْهِ. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had أَعَانَنِي, right? Which means he had supported me, aided me over him. فَأَسْلَمَ فَلَا يَأْمُرْنِي إِلَّا بِالْخَيْرِ or فَأَسْلَمُوا فَلَا يَأْمُرْنِي إِلَّا بِالْخَيْرِ. So the both narrations are good. فَأَسْلَمَ or أَسْلَمُ. The difference is فَأَسْلَمَ, which means that he became a Muslim, right? Or فَأَسْلَمُ, which means that I am in safety from him. It does not mean good, but both are mean. Aisha radiallahu anha, or Safiya bint Huyay radiallahu anha, this is Sahih Bukhari Muslim. She said, the Prophet ﷺ said, إِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ يَجْرِي مِنَ الْإِنسَانِ مَجْرَى الدَّمِ, that the shaitan flows through the human body, similar to how blood flows through your body. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the Muslim. Now this is just tells you their relationship, okay? But in terms of the limitations of what they have, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, for example, in Surah Al-Jinn, Surah Al-Rahman, يا معشر الإنس والجن إن استطعتم أن تنفذوا من أقطار السماوات والأرض لا تنفذون إلا بسلطان. So this is a challenge. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying to the ins and jinn, if you are able to تنفذوا من أقطار السماوات والأرض, penetrate, right, the sky, you have to penetrate them through all the way, then penetrate them. You won't be able to except with strength and help from Allah Himself. Okay? And so they're unable. So it means that even the jinn, no matter how much powerful they have limits to their power. Now some of their limits is that they are unable to open doors if you mention the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on it. So the cupboards, if you close them, you can seal your food at night, you can say Bismillah, they're unable to do it. Now this comes from a hadith in Sahih Bukhari Muslim. Jabir ibn Abdullah, he said, so there's two narrations, one is longer, one is short. I'm just going to mention the shorter one. The Prophet ﷺ said, غَطُّ الْإِنَاءِ وَأَوْقُ السِّقَاءِ. غَطُّ الْإِنَاء, which means cover the plates. So if there's food, you should never leave it at night open, right? You should cover it. وَأَوْقُ السِّقَاء, أَوْقُ, which means tied or not, السِّقَاء, which is the container where they have water in it. They used to be in leather containers, so you just close them out of it, you tie it. وَأَغْلِقُ الْبَابِ, and close the doors. وَأَطْفِئُ السِّرَاجِ, and dim the, what's the siraj? The lanterns, the lamps, because they were made out of usually fire. He said, shut them off. فَإِنَّ الشَّيْطَانَ لَا يَحِلُّ السِّقَاء. The shaitan does not untie what has been tied. وَلَا يَفْتَحُ بَابِ. He does not open doors. وَلَا يَكْشِفُ إِنَاء. Does not uncover what has been covered. فَإِنْ لَمْ يَجِدْ أَحَدُكُمْ إِلَّا أَنْ يَعْرِضَ عَلَى إِنَائِهِ عُودًا. If none of you finds only but a oud, which is a stick to cover it, وَيَذْكُرِ اسْمَ اللَّهِ فَلْيَفْعَلْ. And to mention the name of Allah. Which means you have to mention the name of Allah in all these things. So once you mention the name of Allah and you close doors and cupboards and cover your food, shaitan can't do anything about it. Okay, so there is, no matter how much powerful they are, there is limit to their abilities. Now when I tell you they don't have control over you, this is this is from the Quran itself. Actually, shaitan, the shaitan himself tells you this, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah Al-Ibrahim says, وَقَالَ الشَّيْطَانُ لَمَّا قُضِيَ الْأَمْرُ إِنَّ اللَّهَ وَعَدَكُمْ وَعْدَ الْحَقِّ وَوَعَدتُّكُمْ فَأَخْلَفْتُكُمْ وَمَا كَانَ لِي عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ سُلْطَانٍ إِلَّا أَنْ دَعَوْتُكُمْ فَاسْتَجَبْتُمْ لِي فَلَا تَلُومُونِي وَلُومُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, this is what the shaitan is going to tell to the people and their judgment, because they're going to say, you did this to us. So the shaitan would say, وَقَالَ الشَّيْطَانُ لَمَّا قُضِيَ الْأَمْرُ, when everything has been settled, people are going to go to Jannah, people are going to go to Nar, to hellfire. He said, Allah has promised you the truth. And I have promised you and betrayed my promise, right? Or did not fulfill my promise. فَأَخْلَفْتُكُمْ, I did not fulfill my promise. وَمَا كَانَ لِي عَلَيْكُمْ مِنْ سُلْطَانٍ, I did not have any control over you, except that I only called you, invited you. That is the whispering, right? All I did was hey, why don't you do this, right? Or look at that. Or by the way, this guy is bad, he's doing this for you, you need to take revenge. Whatever is bad, it's just all whispering, right? إِلَّا أَن دَعَوْتُكُمْ, and you responded, you answered to me. So do not blame me and blame yourselves. So we should never accept, why did you do this? Shaitan made me do it. Not make you do anything, right? I'm saying this because my kids use that excuse sometimes, right? Shaitan made me do it. Well, you use that too? Alright, but anyway. Now one interesting, by the way, shaitan, I said that he does everything he tries to do. So for example, when you fall asleep, the shaitan ties 3 knots over your head. Okay? Ties 3 knots. Okay? and he says there's a long night. Like, sleep, there's a long night. Faqad, right? So if he woke up for Fajr, like, once you wake up, he would say, no, sleep, like, there's 3 knots. So that's why if a person, so Prophet said, if a person, once he gets up, فَذَكَرَ اللَّهِ انْحَلَّتْ عُقْدَةٌ, right? One of the knots will be untied. So there's 3 knots.
When he says
This is why when you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you should say? الحمد لله الذي أحيانا بعدما أماتنا وإليه النشور. Remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? So one of it will be tied, right? فإذا توضأ, if you made wudu, انحلت عقدة, right? The second knot will be untied if you made wudu. فإن صلى, if he prayed, then the last knot will be removed. فأصبح نشيطا, he'd wake up very energetic. Okay? طيب النفس. If he did not do that, أصبح خبيث النفس كسلان, right? He'll wake up like, kind of grouchy, grumpy, right? Kaslan, so lazy. I'll tell you this, I guarantee you, anytime you sleep through Fajr because you're too lazy to get up, you're going to wake up in the morning so lazy, so grumpy and grouchy. Right? Guaranteed. Okay? So you should never miss Fajr. And by the way, it doesn't count as Fajr if you wake up late after Shuruq. Some people think that you can pray Fajr either on time or out of time, it's okay. It's a misconception. When I was younger, I thought that, by the way. I thought it's okay to pray Fajr at 9 o'clock in the morning. Until I discovered that it's not right. Which is kind of strange. Nobody taught me, by the way, when I was younger. They're like, just pray when you wake up in the morning. No, that doesn't count, right? It's a complete sin. If you don't prepare ahead of time, you need to prepare. Do not let it go, right? Because this is like, actually the Prophet said, if that happens to you, right, intentionally, you don't wake up, right? That the shaitan had urinated in your ears. Okay. Yeah. That explains why you're grumpy and grouchy and you have issues, right? A friend of mine used to joke about this when he wouldn't see one of the brothers at Fajr. He'd say, "How's your ear?" Right? Did you wash it out this morning? So, but anyway. So sometimes, but anyway, so these are relationships. But what is the purpose of shaitan? What is his intent? What does he want to do? He wants to mislead us. Is that his ultimate goal?
That's the goal of Shaitan.
Take us to hell like
Good. So his ultimate goal, right? His ultimate goal is that the human being, you as a human, would be in the hellfire and never enter Jannah. Okay. If he's unable to do that, then he would settle for the next one, which is that you'll be punished in the hellfire. After you're punished, you'll go to Jannah. If he's unable to attain that, then he wants you to be in a lesser rank in Jannah as possible. And by the way, one thing about the shaitan is that he never sleeps, never gives up, and he has a 50-year plan for you. No joke. There's a 50-year plan for each one of us. And the shaitan is very smart. He does not tell you commit zina.
and very patient.
He's very obviously very patient because he has a 50-year plan. He does not tell you commit zina, because if somebody tells you, let's go commit zina, what are you going to say? What are you going to say? Okay, let's go. What are you going to say? Get out of my face, right? What's wrong with you? Right? So Shaitan doesn't do that. He moves in
Step by step.
stepwise. Okay? Moves stepwise. So that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَلَا تَتَّبِعُوا خُطُوَاتِ الشَّيْطَانِ. Do not follow the footsteps. All it takes is just baby steps. Slowly you're moving away. You don't realize it. Right? That's the trick. You don't realize you're moving away until it's too late. Okay? You don't fall into zina immediately. You don't fall, right? It just doesn't happen. You're walking, done, right? No, it happens with a glance, right? And then a talk, and then a meeting, and then a conversation, and then over years, right? And then okay, by yourself at home, and then slowly you are in the end. It might take 5 years, 6 years before it happens, but if you go down that road, eventually it will happen. Some people, alhamdulillah, don't get that far, but still, as said, he will try to make you fall in the wrong as much as he can. His target is to make you a disbeliever. If he can't, then he'll be punished in the hellfire. If he can't, then the lowest rank of Jannah. Okay? So this is his plan usually, because he's always there. And he made a promise to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? So these are generally speaking, because كَمَثَلِ الشَّيْطَانِ إِذْ قَالَ الْإِنسَانِ يُكْفُرْ, right? كمثل الشيطان إذ قال الإنسان أكفر فلما كفر قال إني بريء منك. Right? So he tells the insan, become a disbeliever. Once you become a disbeliever, he says, I'm innocent of you. None of my business, you committed that. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَكَانَ عَاقِبَتَهُمْ أَنَّهُمَا فِي النَّارِ خَالِدَيْنِ فِيهَا. Both of them are in the hellfire, they are going to eternally be remaining in it.
Okay.
Yes.
How the soul is related with the shaitan?
How is what?
Soul,
Yes.
ruh, or what?
What's no.
Is there any relation?
Are you talking about nafs or ruh?
Ruh.
Alright, ruh, he has no control of it. But in nafs, right? In nafs itself, which is yourself,
Yes.
there's the nafs al-ammara bis-su, the one that tells you to do bad things. The shaitan uses it, leverages on it, right? To convince you to do things.
If the person dies, then does shaitan has any control over the
No.
person?
The angels take it.
And just take it.
Yeah.
So what you see in these houses, in haunted houses, this point.
Alright, good questions. Are there? Okay. Are
The
there,
jinn
these
is
haunted
shaitan.
houses, are these ghosts? Are there such things? Okay, do Muslims believe in ghosts?
No.
No, we don't believe in ghosts. Because your spirit, once you die, is taken immediately, either by the angels of mercy or the angels of punishment. The minute you die. There are no souls that hang around and chill around.
Those are not the house.
No, they don't chill around.
Unfinished business.
There are no unfinished businesses. Right, your time is up.
How about those who do suicide?
What's wrong with them?
Do they still taken by angels or the souls are wandering? Some say the
There are no wandering souls.
Okay.
That's sure.
100%.
Is there hadith for that?
Yes.
Souls are taken right away and they are not left in the earth?
Yes, and the hadith tells you that there are either the angels of punishment or the angels of mercy. And they come with a clothing either from heaven or a clothing from the hellfire. And they wrap the soul in it immediately. And they either take it to, they put it in the grave, no matter what your grave is.
They put in the grave also.
Yeah.
And then after that they're taken out.
And then your grave becomes either part of hell or part of heaven.
Your soul is still there.
Yes, it is.
Suffering there.
Yes, or enjoying
Are
it.
enjoying the heaven.
Yes.
So soul is confined to the grave.
It's another dimension.
No,
It's a complete other dimension.
not in the
You can't find it, you can't search for it. It's another dimension. It's called barzakh, right? Barzakh is a dimension between the hereafter and this world. And so it is there, the enjoyment is there. Either your grave is extended for you to the extent of your eyesight. It does extend, it's in that dimension. But when you look at the grave, for you physically, this is small.
No, exactly.
Right? But anyway, we can get back to, we can
So
start.
the question is that is it confined to grave or in that state? Or it is taken to somewhere in the between
Your
heaven,
great
between
Allah
heaven
makes
and
Allah opens doors for you to heaven. Some of the believers, their souls are allowed to fly around in heaven. Others are not.
Okay.
It depends on your actions and deeds.
But they're not left
physically
open.
not there.
What do you mean? No, they do not roam around in the ground. If you're looking for them, we do not see souls. If that's what you're thinking about.
So the people who see about haunted houses, places, are ghosts, they are jinn.
Jinn, yes,
Shaitan, not
Yes.
people.
yes. Okay. All right. So if the shaitan is unable to, once again, make you become a disbeliever, then he would make you fall into sin. How? By creating animosity between one another. Okay. The Prophet ﷺ mentioned, like the shaitan has given up on you becoming disbelievers, on his companions. وَلَكِنِ التَّحْرِيشَ بَيْنَكُمْ. Right? He causes animosity, friction between you. Okay. So this is how you kind of commit sins. You get mad and insult your brother, whatever the case is. If he's unable to, the other thing he does is also it's called like in Arabic, صَدِّ الْعَابِدْ عَنِ الطَّاعَةِ, right? He tries to stop you from worshipping Allah. Man, you got an exam, right? Why are you going to walk to the masjid? You can't waste no time. But the funny thing is you still wasted anyway on your phone or doing something else. So why are you getting up for Fajr? You have to stay long sleep, long awake. You gotta conserve your energy so you can wake up in the morning and be whatever the case is. They'll try to convince you to stay away from acts of worship. If they're unable to keep you away from the acts of worship, they'll try to distract you in the worship itself. How many of us would start praying and then remember something they lost? Everybody, right? Guess who's that? That's the shaitan, right? Trying to remind you. They're going to talk to you. They're going to give you ideas, thoughts. So they try to make you lose focus while you are in prayers.
What's the name of the shaitan?
If that happens, what do we do?
A'udhu billah.
Right? You do that, right? By the way, the shaitan does that, has a name, by the way. Khanzab, yes, his name is Khanzab. The Prophet ﷺ gave him the name Khanzab. And he says, if you feel that, then seek refuge, say A'udhu billah, and then
Spit on the-
don't
yeah.
spit.
I mean, like,
You don't want to spit on the guy next to you. Okay?
no, like make.
It's called yamfuth. Yamfuth is between blowing, so it's like this, right? So you do that 3 times. You say A'udhu billah, and you do that 3 times.
In the prayer?
Yes.
Yes, in the prayers. In the prayers. But what's okay, your problem is in prayers you can't focus. It's useless to do it after prayers.
No, it's in the.
Alright, so in the prayers do it. Try to focus. Okay? Alright. What about magic and possession? That's usually a subject people are interested in. Magic and possession. Sihr and possession is in Arabic is? No, delusion. What do you mean delusion? Possession is not delusion. Or sihr is delusion. You're saying sihr is delusion? Sihr is delusion.
No, seher is, in Quran, that's what I'm saying, that it's,
Ahmad and Faris. Is there such thing as true magic? Is there anything such as true magic? So there's black and white. So if it's good magic, it's white magic. If it's bad, it's black magic.
It's an illusion, it's a state of mind they control.
No, magic is true.
magic is reality.
Because Prophet was, somebody tried to cast a spell on Prophet.
Alright guys. You didn't answer. Is there such thing as real magic? Yes. You guys all agree? Somebody says it's delusion.
The magic
Well, what about the magicians of Fir'aun?
they were magic also.
They were it wasn't true.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَسَحَّرُوا أَعْيُنَ النَّاسِ. So it's delusions. Illusions, right?
But still in the time of Prophet Solomon, the best one gonna say there is magic, but, and the person.
Excellent.
I wrote some one.
Right.
But no.
So listen up, boys, don't let me stop, you're distracting me by the way. So in the Quran, right, like, verse Sulaiman, وَمَا كُفِرَ سُلَيْمَانُ وَلَكِنَّ الشَّيَاطِينَ كَفَرُوا يُعَلِّمُونَ النَّاسَ السِّحْرَ. Right? So there is true magic. However, with the real magic we're not talking about like the stuff on TV, sleight of the hand, quick hands. No, real magic can be done, and it's usually done by the jinn, which means that the human being is contracting with the jinn to do something for him. It's called sihr because it's unseen. However, the shaitan would not just do anything for you. You'd have to worship the shaitan to do something that is an act of kufr, to do that. Such as, for example, to disgrace the Quran one way or another, in order to tell them I'm a disbeliever, to prostrate, to worship the jinn himself, and then they will agree to do something for you. However, by every action, they do something more. They request something more. Because really in the end, we said they want you to become a disbeliever. Once you become a disbeliever, they do one thing for you. They're not going to do it again. For you to do something else, they now will demand things from you. Right? So there is real magic, but it requires that.
What about the magic of Moses? Was it Musa Islam?
Musa alayhi salam, that was not magic. That was so the staff of Musa, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala truly made it change form
Real.
into a snake. This is why the magicians realized that it was not an illusion. And they realized that it was a true miracle, and so that's why they prostrated. So Musa alayhi salam did not. Oh, by the way, did they call Musa a magician? Yeah, أيها الساحر ادع لنا ربك. It, by the way, did not mean by a sahir as a magician. For them at that time, a sahir was a person who was wise, of wisdom, of intellect. So it's almost like a title, like calling somebody doctor, or an engineer, or whatever the case is. So it was almost like a title. So they're not referring to him as a magician. Okay?
Sorcerer. They call it sorcerer.
Sorcerer, or whatever the case is, wizard. But it was more of a title. Now, so there is real magic, and it doesn't happen except with the assistance of a jinn, and they won't do it until you commit an act of shirk. This is why the person who is Muslim, if they really do true magic, then they are considered a apostate. Muqtarid.
But it is not that some
So this, what about black magic? So if we're talking about true magic, call it whatever color you want. Pink, blue, black, white. It really doesn't matter. Real magic requires the assistance of jinn. They will never do anything for you until you do something for them. Okay?
And it cannot harm you.
There was-
Well, everything happens to the person of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay?
There was some ayah, right, in Quran, like it says like that some angels were sent to teach magic. But it was
That as was a test. So this is I mentioned the ayah, right? يعلمون من السحر وما أنزل على الملكين ببابل هاروت وماروت وما يعلمان من أحد إلا يقولا إنما نحن فتنة فلا تكفر. That is استحوذ عليهم الشيطان, which means that he controls. Not control. You can't really control him, but almost like it's as if he controls them because he plays with them. Says do this, they do this, because they just obey all the whims and desires. All right, possession. Does possession exist? Possession. You know what that means?
Yes.
All right. So possession does exist. It's not it doesn't. On a couple of occasions, people at the time of the Prophet ﷺ did get possessed. And the Prophet ﷺ would do ruqya on them, and he would tell them, order them to exit from the body. But possessions are very rare. They don't happen quite often. They only happen maybe a lot of times as almost like an act of retaliation from the jinn, that they would possess somebody. But generally, whether it's magic or possession, yes, it all happens in the person of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but the shayateen have a very difficult time possessing a person who guards and protects himself with the Quran, prays the 5 daily prayers, says his afkar in the morning and the evening. So really this is the factor. If a person is possessed and he doesn't pray, and he goes to the shaykh and he tells him, help me, it is useless. Right? Because the person himself has to help himself first by praying the 5 daily prayers. You're wasting your time if you don't. You're wasting your time if you are not remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You're wasting your time if you're just sinning. Because every time you do that, you weaken your protection you're weakening your protection Allah gives you. This is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, "Ihfadillah, yahfaz," protect and guard the bounds of Allah. Allah will protect you and guard you. Which means if you don't, then you're not protected and guarded. Okay, so all these things that they're going to generally overall will protect you. The basic rule is, or the basic recipe is, protect yourself by reciting the Quran, remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, fulfilling your obligations, staying away from sins. Okay?
so what do you do if you are
If you're possessed?
Yeah.
You don't know.
Actually, some people, you're right, some people are possessed and don't know they're possessed, but some people actually do realize that they're possessed. Right? So, for example, what do you do? Okay, so you can do ruqya on yourself, or you can have somebody do it for you. But if you do ruqya on yourself, by the way, the ruqya is very dependent on the person who's doing it, on the strength of their iman. Which means that if you're disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is your state of iman? Pretty low. Right? So you're better off finding somebody else. I shouldn't say that. You should try to have faith in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, know what you did is wrong, and just stop doing what you're doing is wrong, and then fulfilling your obligations. And then you can do it ruqya on yourself. Whether it's by recitation of the Quran, or specific verses. The Prophet the best of the ruqya is Surah Al-Fatiha, for example. Right? Reciting the Fatiha on yourself. Ayat al-Kursi before you go to sleep. Ayat al-Kursi is also very powerful. Surah Al-Baqarah, if it's recited at home, the shaitan doesn't enter it. Even if you do adhkar in the morning. In the morning, if you go out, you say, Bismillah, amantu billah, tawakkaltu ala Allah, wa la hawla wa quwwata illa billah. The shaitan would not come to you the entire day. If you say, La ilaha illallah, wahdahu la sharika lah, lahu al-mulku wa lahu al-hamdu, wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir, 100 times in the morning, you're protected from the shaitan the entire day. If you say it in the evening, then you're protected the entire night from the
100
shaitan.
times.
100. La ilaha illallah, wahdahu la sharika lah, lahu al-mulku wa lahu al-hamdu, wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. So you say it at Fajr, then you say it in the evening, anytime from after Asr to after Maghrib. Okay? So 100 times, you will be protected during the day and in the evening.
100 times in one sitting or?
In one sitting,
Yeah.
or throughout the day.
You're like, you start and then you.
You know, I never thought about that. Because I would assume a person would want to do it immediately to have protection, as opposed to like, have protection later during the day. But I guess if you keep the intention that this is for the 100, then I guess that's okay.
But it's 10 times in the Fajr, after Fajr and
This is part of the adhkar, but this is more specific. The Prophet ﷺ said, if you say that 100 times, right, the reward of it, so this is hadith Sahih Bukhari, right? He says, أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال من قال لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد وهو على كل شيء قدير في يوم 100 مرة كانت له عدل 10 رقبات وكتبت له 100 حسنة ومحيت عنه 100 سيئة وكان له حفظا من الشيطان يومه حتى يمسي. So which means the Prophet ﷺ said, whomever in the day says those words 100 times, it will be for him the reward as if he freed 100 slaves, and he will be elevated, given 100 hasanat, and 100 sayyah would be removed, and it would be a protection for him from the shaitan that day. And nobody will be better than him except a person that even said more than that. Okay, so this is something else. So yes, the 10 is there, but this is another hadith that tells you the reward of 100.
one dua
All these are, remember, these are all sunnahs, you can do that. I didn't tell you the entire sunnah thing, I'm just giving you a few things here and there. So that is true, that's from Adhkar also, you can do that. But anyway, this I have covered today. I try to cover everything in one day, because this is the last class, inshallah, we're meeting until we come back in Ramadan. Yes?
For magic,
Magic, what's wrong with magic?
Prophet was, somebody tried to...
So the question, the Prophet was afflicted with magic. Yes?
Yes.
What's wrong with that?
No, I'm asking that...
Is it authentic?
I know it's authentic.
Yes.
It's written, but... So we are all susceptible if
We
prophet-
are susceptible for magic. However, that's a good point. You could be susceptible for magic, but the effect of the magic is dependent on how pious you are. So the person who had performed the magic on the Prophet ﷺ was by the Labid ibn al-Asam. Okay? Now he was considered the strongest magician. In fact, the magic that he performed on Prophet ﷺ, if it was performed on somebody else, it would have killed him. But the Prophet ﷺ, because of who he is, it only affected him slightly. And the way it affected him is that he would wake up in the morning having the illusion that he had relations with his spouse when he did it. But that's the effect of it. So the effect of the magic itself, depending on how strong it is, but also of how pious you are, how much it will affect you. Okay?
The jinn, are there two different jinns, like the one who are found like in places, and who is with you all the time?
What do you mean?
So you said like
Okay,
there is
so
one-
jinn, they have different abilities. They probably also come in different shapes and forms. But they're still all jinn. Same as angels, they have different abilities, different jobs, different strengths. But they're still all angels.
Allah assigns it to us, the jinn who is with us.
No, Allah doesn't tell this jinn you stay with him. Just each person has a jinn when they're born assigned to them, associated with them. It doesn't leave you.
He could be good or bad though, right?
No.
It's always bad.
Why would a good jinn be sticking around with you?
Tell me.
A good jinn doesn't want anything from you. He wants to worship Allah on his own. He doesn't want to interact with humans. It's usually only the bad jinn
And so
that is with you all the time.
trying.
That's trying to keep you away from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
But when I say Bismillah, he should leave, right?
Yeah, but it depends on how strong your iman is. Right?
This is also in the hadith of how, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loved one of his slave, when they do the obligatory, the mandatory.
Yes.
So he said, وَلَئِنْ سَأَلَنِي لَأُعْطِيَنَّهُ وَلَئِنْ
Sa'adan
اسْتَعَاذَنِي
or adan, yes.
What does it mean? What did you say?
It means it's really depend on the power of the azkar and seeking the refuge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It counts on the power of your data. As long as you are obeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it really will be more strong.
More harm.
So I have a question.
Yes.
They die, so they do like new generations. That like, so they are like they keep going so that
Do jinns procreate?
Or do they just, Allah creates new ones?
Do they, no, here's my question. Do jinns procreate? So humans procreate, right? Do jinns procreate? The
Yes.
answer is yes.
Yes.
They get married, they do, they have kids and children. Yes.
Two questions. First is that angel and so jinn can see the angel, so they can see our angels.
They can see angels generally. Do they see our angels? I don't know, maybe. Why does it matter?
No, I'm just wondering. I mean, then they will be like, if angels are protecting us, then they will stay away, or if we do proper azkar, then angel.
Okay, so the ability of the, okay, so even when when the angels are around, jinn could be around too. But when you mention Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or talk about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or read the Quran, they hate it, so they go away. So this is why a person who's constantly reading the Quran is very well protected. A person who, remembers Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala all the time, it really annoys the jinn, they go away. But yes, no, they can be around when the jinn protecting you are around. This is how you get the whispers.
So second question.
Yes.
Is that do they have long life? Like I
Their
remember.
lifespan, I do not know what their lifespan is.
Because one of the wali, he met the jinn who was at the time of Prophet Shah Waliullah. I think that I hope I'm not mistaken.
I don't, they have long lives, maybe possibly.
So that's why he was like kind of tabai.
Once again, I have no, they could have long lives. There are different creatures than us. Their lifespans, and we know our lifespans, the Prophet ﷺ said between 60 and 70 on average, and a few only go beyond that, which is true. Overall life expectancy around the world is 71, 72. But I really don't know, maybe there is, but I have no idea how long their lifespan is. Whether it's short like us or it's longer, long. Either way, you should protect yourself from it. Yes?
I just want to know your schedule, like today is the last day,
So today's last day.
and then?
I'll be out for 2 weeks. So inshallah, once Ramadan starts, I'm planning to have 2 halaqas on Saturday and Sunday. It's the same theme, but one is after Asr and the other one is after. So Saturday will be after Asr. Sunday will be after Dhuhr, the same timing. And the topic will be a thematic, or the themes of the surahs of the Quran, right? So we're not going to go into tafsir, but just generally give you a broad sense of what the theme of the surah is. So that when the shaykh is reciting, for example, Surah Al-Baqarah, you understand what are the general themes of the surah it is, right? What's it talking about generally?
You will coincide with the.
I will try to coincide it, but I cannot guarantee, because some surahs are much longer than others.
Yes.
When it comes to the shorter ones, I'll try to take it by juz, maybe perhaps, of what for example, the 30th overall talks about it, what's the majority of it, and stuff like that. I have no idea if we'll be able